Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and fortunately, not being blown off of a balcony roof. So we're here with some amazing people. I'm going to have everyone just give a quick, your favorite part of your job, because you were already introduced and everyone knows what you do. But I'm just going to remind everyone in the room that we're here to talk about how we build iconic brands through authentic partnerships. And in quite a few panels that I've either been on or sat on this week, authenticity has come up over and over and over again. And I think it's so interesting that this is the word we keep hearing, which I love. So I'm just going to pass it to you before we get into our questions, just for top of mind in your role, the most exciting thing that you're doing.
Yeah, I'm Luis Garcia, CMO of Tree Hut. The most exciting thing is remaining authentic to our purpose, which is having fun and feeling good as part of your daily routine. It's really motivating to have that every day and work for that every day.
Hello. I would say the best part of my job is continuously learning. I'm very curious. I love attending events like that. And now Marcus is now my favorite professor because I've learned so much even listening just to him today. So I'll have to connect with him later. But being curious, learning consistently, always.
Hi everyone, Lucy Werner. So I lead partnerships for Marriott. So that encompasses our loyalty partnerships, strategic alliances, and then our passions, which is sports, music, the outdoors, and F&B. So I would say the passions, which is the fun stuff. So it's an opportunity for us to really make our brand stand out in cultural moments. So we just announced FIFA yesterday, which is super exciting.
Hi, I'm Bentley King with the Magnum Ice Cream Company. If you don't know it, you may not be alone. We were formerly the ice cream division with Unilever, and we're in an incredibly exciting time as we chart our new path forward. So the most exciting thing, aside from standing up a new company, is we're at a fascinating moment, I think, just in terms of from a snacking perspective and how people in terms of are really evolving kind of the way they consume our products. And ice cream is fun always. It's even more fun when the entire macro environment is changing around you with GLP-1s and all those kind of things. So it's super fun to go to work every day and start to learn about what's going on.
I would love to talk about that on its own topic. So, our first question, and we'll go down, but then we'll skip around and let's be as conversational as we can for this awesome audience. So let's just start by defining what authenticity means for your specific brand or brands. And like when you're thinking about an authentic partnership or being authentic to your brand, what are the core principles that you follow to identify those partners? Go ahead. Yeah, Luis.
Yeah, I think it needs to. So, in the audience, if people have daughters between 10 and 25, they will know what Tree Hut is. If you don't, you have no idea what Tree Hut is. And I think it's part of the conversation that this demographic and this group of people want to have is that needs to be fun, right? Like we don't want to get too political. It's a moment to smell a product, have a beautiful all shower moment for yourself, relaxation, and we need to align with the partnerships that we have. That so if we have someone very controversial, we try to stay away because although that will drive more eyeballs, that will drive more engagements, is not really authentic to who we are. And if it's a little too noisy and too inflammatory, we're like, yeah, that's not for us. So we really stick to that when selecting partnerships.
And so authenticity for me is about aligning to our shared values and purpose. If that doesn't happen, I definitely say no. We partnered recently with Chelsea Handler, and the first thing I wanted to filter through was, does she know the brand? And then turns out that she not only knows it, she loved it. So that for me was like, okay, there's some shared values and alignment there. Secondly, you have to make sure it's culturally relevant. So I know we heard a lot about culture earlier. And for me, it's not just one moment, it has to be consistent. And we actually worked with her on something that she currently was doing. She actually every year does this annual bikini ski run. And I was like, what better way to partner with someone to showcase not only a very cultural, cool moment and invite people to come out and put on their bikinis and their swimwear, but also because that's a great way to showcase Gold Bond's performance, right? If you can be hydrated in the snow and blizzard weather, then you could be hydrated in Vegas, California, New York, wherever. And the best moment for me that I knew that this was an authentic partnership is when a woman came up to us and said, that her daughter was skiing all day, but she had to stop because her hands literally were cracked, and she saw our partnership. She was like, I'm a Gold Bond user for life. And I was like, now that's it. That's where you make that connection.
That's amazing. I was just on a mountain with my kids, and we are a Gold Bond family also. And the first,
pay her.
I know, we're just met for the first time. And when we saw Chelsea, she's also so honest and so real, and that's incredible. They're a very cool moment. What about you, Lucy?
Yeah, so for us, it really starts with a guest. So every day we got about 1.5 million folks that stay with Marriott as a brand, and we gather lots of data. So there's about 400 data points we track. And we noticed, like post-COVID, that there was a real shift around why people took trips. And this is really a driving force into us leaning into passions. So people are traveling for sports. Sports actually drives around 10% of global travel volume, right? And you've seen the phenomenon with Taylor Swift and Beyonce around music tours. And so it's understanding the guests and why they travel, and then figuring out the areas that are of interest, like sports and music, and then brands that resonate with us and with our guests. And specifically for the younger Gen Z and millennials, they're leaning into the space more. So that's how we really curate the passions, is with a guest-centric view and taking a longer-term view of brands that resonate with ours.
I love that. Can I just ask you one question to build on what Kimberly said? Is then when you're looking at talent based on what you know about your consumer, are you also thinking about that consistency? Because I do feel like that is an issue with influencer talent partnerships, that they aren't necessarily always consistent.
For sure, yeah. So we're looking at not just consistency in terms of the talent and values, but also in the guest journey. So if you're making a trip for a sports event or a music event, we find that actually half of the guests will do an add-on destination, like detour destination, right? So, for example, like I took my daughter to Taylor Swift in Munich, and then we ended up doing like a little circuit within Austria, right? And so this is quite typical guest behavior. And so there's an opportunity for us not just to host people in our hotels when they're traveling for the sporting event or the music event, but to activate on property, right? So when they're coming back from the concert or the game and they're amped up, that they can actually gather with their friends, right? And to figure out how we make that journey more seamless and how we can add on detour destinations.
Bentley, let's hear about how you are defining authentic partnerships.
You're so right. Authenticity seemed to come up at least 4 or 5 times in every single conversation, so you nailed it on that front. I think we look at partnerships across a whole spectrum, whether it's from licensing partnerships to creators and influencers who we work with to media partners effectively. And so there's a huge range, but I think it's important to sort of de-average a little bit of what authenticity means. And we've got an incredible portfolio of brands that are 160 years old, like Breyers, to newer brands like a Yasso or a Talenti, for example. So authenticity does mean something a bit different. I'd say you can't talk about authenticity without talking about consistency. For us, it's a really important thing in how we show up, whether it's our product experience, our communications. That to me is in some ways a really important part that we don't often talk about, because authenticity is a bit sort of otherwise amorphous term. And then talked about criteria or sort of principles. We live by kind of 3 principles, I think, in general. One of them is, does it enhance the product credentials and the quality? If I give you a peanut butter ice cream versus if I give you a Reese's ice cream, and Hershey's is one of our fantastic licensing partners, it's a whole different experience immediately, right? And the second one would be, does the authentic relationship actually help us reach some new consumers and new target audiences, which is part of the name of the game. And And I think the last one is, again, as the stewards of all the brands that we work on, does it actually enhance kind of the equity? And so recognizing what we are today to consumers, and then does it sort of build on that? Does it have a kind of positive halo? But all that sort of is in the secret sauce and the art of authenticity.
I'm going to stick here with you because you basically are going into my very next question, which, without me reading it word for word, is basically when you're evaluating these. So, right, we established how do you think about authentic partnerships and use your core values to go after them. Then when it comes to evaluating those partners, whether it's an influencer, a content platform, a commerce solution, whatever that partner is, what kind of data and trend is helping you make the decision? Because there's a lot that will fit with your brand. And then how are you ensuring that a really incredible, creative, maybe emotional partnership leads to that sale?
It's this may be in some ways the most interesting part or provocation here because we have a blend, of course, of short-term metrics that we always look at, whether it's sort of consumer sentiment to engagement rates, all the sort of the usual suspects, and then stuff that we look over time, which is sort of equity measures and penetration and all the things that many of the people that have in this room have grown up with. I think it's important, though, that we acknowledge this is really hard, and it's gotten super duper cluttered. You have different data points coming in at different times. None of the data sources are sort of consistent. And we're here at CS. I think technology is where we need to lean in on. What we're hoping for is actually that we're much more hands off the wheel, and that we're actually able to make decisions around performance much more from an automated standpoint, because the marketers and the teams, the people on our teams, are super overwhelmed. And that's where we're excited about getting to, almost where you're not having to sit in front of reams and reams of data and make a decision, did it work or not, because it's never black or white. It's actually that we can use technology to help us a bit more on that journey.
I just will add, because I think that's very important. We, as I mentioned, we did the ski run with Chelsea Handler in 2025, and we're repeating it for 2026. And one of the things is, how do we make sure we deliver better, bigger, amplified, the way that, of course, my CEO and CFO will go, yeah, this is worth it. And in 2025, we delivered 3 billion impressions. We grew 12% year over year growth. So that is a huge challenge. So I am trying to figure out ways to measure it differently, because I don't know if I'll be able to get 10 billion impressions or 6 billion impressions. So I want to make sure, how do we make sure it's meaningful, and if we're continuing to build upon those brand health measures. So a brand for me. And the great thing is, I do believe that we're making some inroads into younger consumers, where it's been our challenge. Although Chelsea is not Gen Z, she appeals to Gen Z, and so we're trying to figure out other ways to measure. But it is a constant struggle, and I think we all will have to figure that out.
Lucy, what about you?
Similar to the sentiments shared. I mean, I think the challenge is that the space is crowded and not all assets do all jobs, right? And so, our sponsorship portfolio is typically more top funnel awareness, but then I think it's also, how do you get third-party data to be able to understand benchmarking and, if it's really driving brand uplift, because you see, a lot of players are kind of plowing into this passion space, right? Whether it's credit card companies and banks and hospitality brands. And so how you truly measure brand resonance in these cultural moments, and then seeing how it actually drives bookings down the funnel, that full funnel measurement is quite challenging. And we actually launched in our rooms a media network called Riot Media last summer at Cannes. And what's been interesting is how that actually helps us connect the customer journey, because you can see your customer digitally through the app, through their booking journey, but then in the room. So that's been a really helpful proof point to help us connect the dots across the funnel.
Luis, what about you? When you're doing a collaboration, how are you thinking about, how are you not measuring in terms of going into a big data conversation, but you use values to choose an authentic brand to partner with. How are you then measuring that success when it might not be a very straightforward impression or CTR.
Yeah, in terms of when you choose a partnership, so a Tree Hut, we work like a not only a beauty manufacturer but also like a fashion house. So we have 4 seasons, and each season has a limited an LTO collection and things like that. We are able to just, and I think it was related a little bit to the previous questions. You need to educate and kind of your board and your CEO, because we, to the best of the ability of data, we can't predict the future yet, right? So we have a great partnership coming up, and we had a great partnership in the past, and everything aligns, and then the data is not there. And then you also need to look at the macro environment that help it. So I think from us, from a perspective, we sell in to our retailers, and we really trial and error, and we start finding the trends, and now we know what are the risky investments, but it really happens. You gotta go through it, which is a little. If you have larger cycles, it's difficult. If we have a quarterly cycle, we're able to even push the envelope a little bit within an authentic partner, and that's the way. Then we have a set of criteria that has come from just trialing constantly different partnerships.
I think I know we're on kind of like the last portion of this talk, and I want to bring it back to how you're defining authenticity. And I think, again, because it's been brought up in every conversation, I've heard it brought up almost in antithesis to AI and kind of this younger generation that everyone wants to market to, starting to go analog. Like, there's so many factors. So I guess I want to hear from you all. You're brilliant at what you do. There's people out here that are learning from you. So in this moment, when you're thinking about truly creating an authentic but impactful partnership, what's the advice you have? You have to deal with your board. You have to deal with your CEO who's expecting double-digit increase and might not take. But when you're thinking about the perfect way to prepare a company and then execute with a great collaborative partner, what is it that helps you drive through that maybe some other people could learn from?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think it's being guest-centric, right? Thinking about the guest and how do you engage with them holistically, right? From discovery through to the actual experience of the collab, whether it's an experience, whether it's a product, and what's going to give them an element of surprise to get them to come back. Because ultimately that'll drive sales, that'll drive awareness, and that'll drive loyalty, right? And so I think it's being clear of the guest, what's going to resonate, and then defining the job to be done and mapping that across the customer journey.
Maybe just to build off Lucy's point, and it's going to sound very consistent, it's knowing your consumers better or as well as you can is so important. And again, if you look at the brands that are winning in their respective categories, I don't care if it's B2B, B2C, they're always about the ones that are listening. And listening is and what we teach to our kids, right? How to listen better, but it's really important. The brands that are sort of like upping their game on a listening front and responding are absolutely being rewarded for that. So I think in some ways it's a balance between being a bit less precious about what the authenticity is. Old school marketers' way would be we craft what the brand voice and the brand tonality and we push that out there. But it's also maybe being a bit more open to how consumers are seeing your brands, and then pouring gasoline on that. That is, to me, a bit more of the redefinition of kind of what authenticity is going to be looking like or should be looking like versus maybe how it's been in the last 10 years.
And I think I'll just add to build. We have to lose a little bit of that control. And I love when you said listen, because one of the ways I'm working with my team to kind of to deliver is you have to listen, right? Learn, and really learn and lean into what your consumers are saying in order to lead. And I love when you said not be so precious, because it's difficult for us to lose that control. We're very purist when it comes to marketing. We want to talk about guidelines, brand equity. But even as I mentioned, the partnership with Chelsea, I had to convince my team, let her roll. Like, let's just do it. Let's see what happens. And she talked about Gold Bond getting closer to her than any man in the last 6 months. So, I mean, we were like, yes. And if I had to push that through my CEO, he probably would have said, no, that's too, don't do it. I was like, listen, lose a little control. Let this happen naturally. Let's be very organic in our space and the way we speak to consumers. It will resonate, and it continues to resonate. So just let it go. Be free. Dance a little. Have some fun.
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. And we at Tariha got into a point that we are building the brand with the consumer, right? We're social first. So the brand is out there, and it's the perception of the brand that audience is engaging. We've lost officially the control of it. And if you try to control the narrative, it's like if like the parents getting into the room, you cannot do that. You cannot delete posts. You just gotta let it go. And then try to post something that opens an area and they can give the conversation there, but that's as much as you can do. So we are really clear on the idea that we're building this brand with them. And I've been in big school that was all put into the drawers, and now it's just such more an exciting, like fabulous world where you see your brand being shaped by social media, which is a lot of fun.
That's so great. Well, we're going to wrap, but this was such a interesting panel for me because out of my 3 children, I have a 13-year-old girl who uses Triet. We all use Gold Bond. I'm a Marriott Bonvoy whore. And when you say not everyone knows Magnum, I don't know what you're talking about. That is our number one ice cream bar that we have. So it's been amazing to meet and get to know all of you. And I think that at the end of the day, you each have such an incredible brand or portfolio of brands to be able to go out there and build. And I just want to say thank you for building authentic brands and choosing great partners. And for that advice, especially just let it go. I know all of your bosses will like to hear that, but I think when you really believe in something, it makes it even easier to do that. So I hope you had a great CES. I hope everyone here had a great CES, and thank you so much.
Thank you.